2013. The topic today is, I have a fan base, now show me the money. So this talk is a collaborative one between Facebook, which is no introduction, we're all at the offices, and Flock. Flock is a social media agency with amazing digital skills. We're also one of Facebook's preferred marketing developers. Just to do an introduction for the speakers today, we've got Sunita here, Director of Facebook. This here is Brendan, he's the Operations Director at Flock. And my name is Elena, I'm one of the Social Directors at Flock. Just have a look at some of our profile pics, you can get an idea of who we are. That's me. Okay, so starting off today, first things first, we aren't really going to go into a lot of the groundwork around social media. So the basics that you hear about getting things together, how you start off on social media. However, we will touch on a few of these areas because they're still relevant to the talk today. Some of these things are two-way conversations with your brand, creating brand affinity, taking advantage of the opportunities for engagement and amplification, generating buzz around your brand, and learning about your customers and fan base. So this is not the only important thing, you also want to learn from your customers. Okay, so why is ROI a big deal in social right now? Just to give you a little bit of perspective, if you were to go and do a search in 2010 for social media ROI, it would have been around 1.5 million hits that you got in that search term. Take it forward 1 year later to 2011, you did that same search, the number went up to about 2.5 billion. So you can see that there's quite an exponential increase in the number of people who are interested in this topic, and it's just been growing and growing since then. So we thought it's a very pertinent thing to discuss at this point in time, given the maturity of where social media is at right now. It's not just about how do I get on and how do I start, it's about how do I see returns from it. So today we're actually going to talk about the hard data, the facts, the figures, and getting a monetary value attached to social media. Okay, so we're assuming that a lot of you guys have already gone through this phase already. You've built your fan base, you have it. So you might have followers on Twitter, you've probably got a community on Facebook, you've probably got a LinkedIn group, you've probably got videos up on YouTube. There's many different platforms where you already have a following and you have customers that are loyal to you. But however, say your CMO or your CEO comes to you and they say, we've put money into developing these platforms, to starting them, to maintaining them. What am I actually seeing from them? What am I getting back? Where's the ROI? And how can I quantify it? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Okay, so this is a little bit more difficult than you may think, but it is possible. So some of the challenges that we see when trying to measure ROI with social media is partially because of its own nature. It's very fragmented, so there's different platforms, they have different ways of operating, and it's not always easy to compare across them. The measuring tools that are used are also quite different. So the way that you assess something on Facebook is not the same as the way you assess the success of your Twitter profile or your LinkedIn group. Another problem that's found not only in social media, this is found in other channels as well, is actually closing that loop between what you do in marketing and your sales that result. So how much of the sales that you are finding, that your increase in sales is actually attributable to your efforts in marketing. Another thing is with digital marketing, it's actually become quite easy to make that tie, but social media as a subset of digital media, it's expected that that is also able to follow the same pattern and link back, say, how your search is leading to sales, but it's not always that easy. Okay, so looking at where do we start? What we're going to cover today is two aspects. The first is we're going to look at building and measuring, but before you get there, you want to lay the groundwork. So take a step back and actually think, what are the goals? What am I trying to get out of my social media program? This can't actually stand alone. No one is on social media just because they need to be. It needs to actually be part of your overall business goals. So your social media goals need to fall below that and tie into that quite strongly. The second thing you need to look at is the audience that you're trying to reach. It's really, really important that you define who are these people that I'm actually trying to engage with, that I want to ultimately become not just my fans, but also my customers. The other thing you need to look at is your key KPIs or key performance indicators. This is really, really important for being able to say whether your social media efforts have been successful or not. So also in this area, it can be tricky because there's a lot of different KPIs that can be used across the platform. So Twitter followers, or number of people in your LinkedIn group, or number of hits on your blog. But there are some which you can actually use across all the platforms, and you can look at things like fan growth, response rate, and engagement rate. And those kind of metrics can sort of be used in general in social media. Ultimately though, what you really want to do is look at how you can tie back social media to your business measures. So this isn't number of fans, etc. We're looking at things like decreasing costs and increasing sales. So this is really actually the bottom line of what you are trying to achieve when you're looking at putting a social media strategy in place. Okay, so now once you've got this groundwork laid, these are the two items that I mentioned, building and measuring value. So firstly, you can find new ways to create value for your brand using social. That's the building phase. Secondly, you need to put a strategy in place to actually be able to put a monetary value to what social media is giving you, and that's the measuring phase. So what we'll do today is we'll look at a couple of examples, both of building and measuring. Real world examples, some of them are from Asia, some of them are from the rest of the world. We can see what companies have done and how they've actually been able to put the value onto their social media initiatives. Okay, so if we first start and take a look at building value. One of the ways that social is really good at building value is actually customer service. So we've seen quite a lot of people using Twitter and Facebook for this. It's quite convenient for users because they're already actually using those platforms, they're online, they're generally tweeting or they're checking Facebook at least a couple of times a day. It's pretty easy for them to go and get customer service rather than having to make an additional phone call, go to another website. It's just really convenient for them. Also, if your agents help people on those platforms, it does create positive stories that can then be shared. There's also a measurable impact of using customer service. So taking a look at one example, AirAsia, everyone knows this, I'm sure we've all used it to travel around the region. AirAsia was actually one of the companies that was known for an exceptionally good response rate on Twitter before it started the dedicated customer service initiative. So they were known for responding to between 40 and 50% of the tweets. They'd actually service their customers and answer their questions. Taking it one step further, this is what AirAsia has also done. They've set up a Facebook page which with Little Miss Red. So she is available to chat to people live. If any of their customers have questions about flights, delays, anything they want to know, they can actually use this interface and receive answers straight away. So this is obviously done really well. AirAsia has actually seen about a 73% response rate on their Facebook blog post, which is a really excellent number. So you can see that this actually does impact the bottom line. If you don't have to have expensive call centers, people are finding help and assistance through these kind of channels, it really shows a monetary value. Okay, so existing CRM, most companies do have something in place already. CRM has been around for a long time in various formats. But what social can do is complement what you already have in place. It gets actually value from customer interactions in a different kind of way. So although your traditional CRM channels are still very valid, what CRM enables you is to actually tap into those conversations that are happening outside of the channels that your brand manages. So people will be talking about your brand whether you like it or not, and it's not always going to be in an official capacity. So this allows you to actually become involved in those other conversations that are happening that are still around your brand. Also, with any kind of good conversation, it's really important when doing CRM on social that the brand knows when to listen as well as when to talk. So it needs to be a natural way of interacting with people, as you would in any kind of conversation. Okay, so we've got some examples from the automotive industry. You can see on this graph, the fourth one there is the automobile industry. It might be a bit small for you to read, so I'll just let you know what those two measurements are. The lighter purple line is actually engagement rate by fans, and the darker one is the response rate by admins. So if you look at the automotive industry, you can see that fans have actually been asking a lot of questions, but the response rate is really, really low. So I've got two examples of companies that have actually tried to address this. They've put things in place so they do actually give their customers a chance to interact with them. Starting out, we'll have a look at General Motors. So they started this blog, it's called Fastlane, and it's actually written by one of the senior executives of General Motors. And this was a huge hit. What they actually used the site for primarily was to do customer focus groups and to do research that way. They've actually found that they made a saving of $180,000 per year, which is not an insignificant amount. And this has actually saved them from spending money on doing research via other channels. Another side effect of this is that they found people really responded well to the fact that it was senior executives that were running these focus groups and not just some kind of focus group moderator. So you can see that this has aided goodwill towards the brand, and it's also saved them a lot of money. Harley-Davidson. Okay, so this is the second example. This site that you see here is called HD Talking, or Harley-Davidson Talking. This was actually started not by Harley-Davidson themselves, but by fans. I'm sure you all know that if you're a biker and you're into your Harley, then you're going to be quite passionate about it. So people came together, they created this, they talk about parts, about bike rallies or where to go drive, and they've actually got 7 mechanics that are on call at all times to answer people's questions on this forum. So this actually grew to about 50,000 members strong. And the cost to Harley-Davidson is practically nothing. They've not set it up, they don't moderate it at all, they just have the mechanics there available to help their consumers. So again, huge goodwill, very little cost, and saving them a lot on call centers and people having to go into the Harley-Davidson shops themselves to get help. So there's some examples of how people have been using social to actually impact their bottom line quite a bit, making a lot of savings and also generating real goodwill for their brands. Okay, direct earning channels. So this is another way in which we can look at building value for your brand using social. Some of the options that we have here are driving to purchase. We've got e-commerce, which is either directly within social or it's somehow connected to social. So we'll go a bit further into how that can work. Then again, there's alternative revenue streams that can actually be generated that your business never had before. So we'll see an example of how MediaCorp created that. They didn't actually have this channel before they got involved in social media, so it's generating more income for them. And then consumer value proposition. So this is just adding on a whole lot of extra value to your consumers. I'm going to pass over to Sunita. She's going to run through a couple of examples. Firstly, starting off with UFB.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Sounds very quiet. So when we were talking about this topic and looking for case studies to be able to share with you, we wanted to pull of the hundreds and thousands of case studies that we had, something that really spoke to the title of our morning session, which was, I have this huge fan base, I need to engage them, I need to activate them, I need them to buy my product, how do I do that? So YetMe was, I thought, just a great example. They're a clothing company in India. And when they came to us in the middle of last year, they had 1 million fans on their page. And they had spent a lot of time and energy and money building that 1 million fans. And the question was, okay, now I need these guys to buy my product, and as well as sort of grow my fan base even further. So we sat with them and we literally, and I'll share a little bit more with you later, but there's 3 things that we always concentrate on, which is basically reach, resonance, and result. So reach is really about when you look at, say, your 1 million fans on your page, are they your customers? You know, when you go to your page insights and you look at the demographics, do they actually reflect the people who you think would buy your clothes? So that's one thing. So as you're building your fan base, it's important to actually build the right fan base. So that's reach. Resonance is what you're sharing with them, the products that you're putting out, your content, your pictures, your video. Do they really represent who you are? And would they be interesting to your customers? How do I put something out there that could actually have someone looking and go, wow, I really like that. And then the third thing is obviously result. So how do I then move the person to the last bit of the process, which is online purchasing, e-commerce, all of that great stuff. So that's exactly what we did with Get Me. It was reach, resonance, and then result. And after working with them for about 2 months, this is where we ended up. They had 125 increase in conversion rate. They had 4.5 times ROI. So every dollar that they put into Facebook, they got 4.5 in sales. 125 increase in conversion rate is really, of all the advertising, the content that they were doing, we sat down and we looked at what they were doing and we were very blunt. We said, you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing this. So people were engaging with your content a lot more. And ever since then, just based on performance of their entire marketing budget, they basically allocated 80% to Facebook because they're all about the ROI. Another example that we have is Lawson's. So Lawson's is a convenience store in Japan, and we have a product called Offers, which is another one of our ROI products. It's digital compliant, if anything. So Lawson's wanted to sell chicken. Just in case you're wondering, that little square thing in the corner is a piece of chicken. So they put out offers, and it was to drive traffic to Lawson's. Redemption was high, people were going in, people were buying, so they were happy about selling their chicken. But one really interesting thing from Lawson's was they came back with that third piece of information, which was 70% of the people that went in to buy a piece of chicken also bought something else. So when you drive traffic in that sense, people tend to shop around. So we tend to have those similar conversations with any redemption that is ongoing. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about Pinterest right now with Brendan.
Cool, thanks. Okay, so Pinterest is another channel or platform that can be used to drive, I guess that drive to purchase that we've been talking about. So this example shown here is from Etsy.com, so I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. But one of the really interesting things that Pinterest has built into it is this ability to pick up the purchase price of products that you're looking to. And you may be able to see it across the top left corner of a lot of these images. You can see a price for this. So when people are using Pinterest, they're already in a kind of window shopping, wish list kind of mindset. There's quite a sort of conducive mindset to purchase anyway. When you're sticking price in front of people, it's very easy for them to click through, and they take them straight to the e-commerce platform offsite, and they make the purchase. So as a platform, if you manage it well, it can actually be really effective to drive an direct purchase. And Etsy is kind of known for more of a sort of arts and crafts type approach or product, but also works with bigger brand products too. So here we've got Dell and monitors, so you can see this can be used across many different verticals. So then we move on to another option, which is actually e-commerce. So rather than driving off platform to purchase, we talk about e-commerce with a social integration. So first option that we're talking about here is we take an existing e-platform, e-commerce platform, and then integrate social into that. Etsy is actually another great example again, where they have a platform. You can link it into your Facebook profile, and suddenly it brings in all this other information and makes the experience much more full. So you're connecting to your friends, you see what your friends might like. Do you want to buy a gift for this person? These are the things they might like based on what we know about their Facebook profile. So it creates this whole kind of richer, more conducive to purchase experience. Second thing here is about building e-commerce into social. So this isn't for every brand or for every product, but it can actually be really effective, and we'll show some examples of that in a second. But this is where you bring your e-commerce platform into social and make you want to purchase directly there, where people are actually already spending their time, already looking at your products and interacting with your brand. So at this point I'm going to talk a little bit about Nivea. Nivea for Flock is a client that we've worked with for the last 2.5 years, so it's a really good example of kind of all of the stages that we've talked about so far, and right up to that purchase point. So we went through that building a fan base stage. So Nivea, I don't know if you're familiar with the brand, but it's kind of known as a sort of a traditional product brand. Like the customer base is actually quite traditional as well. Typically, existing customers are a little bit older. They kind of, their grandmother used it, so they used it, and all this kind of thing, right? So they started really from scratch. But through actually, I guess they recognized that they needed to start appealing to a younger customer base, and they started reaching out to those people, and also realizing that social isn't just for young people anymore. It's the whole demographic is there. And we were using an always-on strategy, so we're constantly talking to people, constantly creating engagement, and basically building up to that point where they've got a really engaged, really interested brand base. And then we start, okay, now how do we start bringing the product in and start creating sort of purchase mindset? So one of the ways we do that is through sampling. So sampling, we want to get people trying the product, we want to get products in their hands, then people are obviously more likely to move to the next stage of the funnel where they actually start creating that purchase, creating an affinity for the brand. So this was hugely successful through Facebook. People, as I said, are already there, and just the temptation is really quite simple, and then the amplification of it as well is great. We're getting huge amounts of feedback as well from people, so creating that positive word of mouth and really trusted referrals. And then finally, Christmas just gone, we actually took the next step, which was to take them into purchase within social. So we created opportunities with put together a special kind of, this is Australia and New Zealand, by the way. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. So Australia and New Zealand summer is just over the Christmas period, so we put together a kind of summer pack. So this is things like sun cream, all the other kind of products that you might use during the summer period. And put together these packs, a special kind of Facebook fans only available pack. So you get this idea that people are privileged, they are your fans, you're giving them something for listening to you and being part of your experience. And then not only that, we're actually taking their money you're getting them to actually buy your products. And the results were awesome. We had all these people posting all of them saying, thank you so much, we received these products, it's great. So they have people who are paying for the product, but they're actually jumping on there and thanking Nivea for putting the product up there and making it available, putting pictures up of how they gave it to their friends, etc. So these are really great referrals. And then, because it's sold out, you always have people messaging us saying, hey, when's the next slot going to be? And it was going to run for 4 to 6 weeks, this campaign. Everything sold out within a week in Australia, so fully sold out of all the products. And in New Zealand, 1 hour, everything gone. So it was just quite amazing, the reaction. And it really is a result of building up that whole relationship with fans over a long period of time, and then saying, okay, we're ready for the next stage now, where we actually start putting product in front of them. Okay. So that's kind of what we're going to cover for direct purchase. I'm going to talk a little bit about alternative revenue streams. So, as I mentioned earlier, this is really about how do you actually create new ways of making money that were not available to the business before they were actually in this channel. So the example here, I think we have a couple of people from MediaCorp here, but this is an example from MediaCorp in Singapore. So you're probably aware that MediaCorp own a lot of properties in Singapore, television, also radio, and so on. So one thing that they've, there's a certain type of program that lends itself to voting. So things like Singapore Idol, when that was here, and also they think about things like Star Awards every year, where people, the public can come in and vote for who they want to progress to the next stage, or who they want to be their favorite couple in this case, this kind of stuff. Previously there was SMS voting, there was telephone and voting. These are very like one-to-one interactions, very private transactions that people are making with the brand. And so MediaCorp recognized that it needed to go out to social to actually try and start amplifying this. And this is a very shareable type of content. If you're voting for your favorite TV star or somebody on American Idol, Singapore Idol, this is something that you want people to talk about, and it's very sort of naturally shareable. But they also don't want to cannibalize their income, right? They want to be able to create a new revenue stream. So this platform that's set up on the MediaCorp properties allows them to, first of all, people can start voting for those people, but then if they want to continue voting, they have to actually pay with Facebook credits. So it's all integrated into the Facebook ecosystem. So they can use Facebook credits to buy additional votes. And obviously when they do that, everything gets published out there, their friends see who they're voting for, etc. And people really are using this platform to buy votes. Okay, so then talking about customer value proposition. So how do we actually make the perceived value of your product increase in the eyes of your customers? So an obvious way is through post-purchase support. So when you provide really good support for your customers, obviously the way they feel about your product, their likelihood to recommend your product, and the likelihood that they'll buy your product again, all of those things increase. So social media is a really good place to provide that kind of post-purchase support. AirAsia was kind of an easy example for that, where they actually help people out if they're having any problems. A shot. Okay, I'm just going to carry this. Sweet. Okay. Community. Okay, so I think one of the best examples I can think of for the community is Nikon. So Nikon, obviously, camera manufacturer. What they do really well is set up places that people can come and talk about the products together. And you know, people who buy Nikon cameras are generally enthusiasts. They're really into photography and so on, right? So this is a place they can come and ask each other, hey, what lens should I use for this? Similar to Harley Davidson's another example of that, where you get enthusiasts, you get them together, you get them helping each other. From them, when they see the brand engaging with them in this way, they really appreciate that. And to them, the perceived value of your product suddenly goes up in their eyes. And the last thing is creating absolute utility, which sounds really kind of theoretical and vague. But there's some really nice examples of that too. So I think Nike Plus is a great example of that. So you know, if you're not familiar with that little chip that you stick in your shoe, or you can run an app in your iPhone or whatever, and it tracks using GPS and gyroscopes, you can track what's your run and what distance you ran, speed, all that kind of stuff. Kind of cool, interesting to be able to track these things and monitor your own progress. Once you bring it into social and make that connection, which they have, suddenly you're pumping that stuff out to your friends and you're competing with your friends saying, hey, I ran 20 Ks this week, how far have you run? It allows friends to actually message back and cheer you on and give you encouragement and all this kind of stuff. So suddenly the utility of that product is greatly increased compared to if you're just using it for yourself to monitor your runs, how am I doing? It's really quite a different proposition at that stage. Another example of that is MX. So MX had a really well-received program that they ran in the US called Link Like Love. Some of you may have heard of it before. So it's been around for quite a while. The idea is that it's actually creating targeted offers and bringing them to you based on your Facebook profile and information that we can gather about you as a person. And what it does, it makes it really easy for you to find relevant deals. You just hit add to cart, bang, that deal's on your card. They've since morphed that into Amex Sync. So this program has been running for a couple of years now, very successfully. And they've extended as well fairly recently to Twitter. So adding the Twitter Sync component too. So the way this works is you just literally tweet a hashtag and they take that as a purchase. So they put out deals out there, you say tweet this hashtag, and bang, they just send the product to you, the purchase is done. So pretty interesting and very, very shareable, obviously, because every time you're buying a product, that's a public tweet. Everybody knows about it. Obviously, other platforms allow you to do that as well, and the trusted referrals and friends. The cool thing about them doing it on Twitter is that means we can actually measure the success of this program even if we're not Amex. So we can see from the results that over a 4-week period, almost 300 tweets an hour that they were sending out. We can measure the total spend, so it's about $7 million over 4 weeks, so not to be laughed at. And they're adding 78 new users every hour. So suddenly your credit card isn't just a credit card. Everybody else can give you a credit card, but this is actually gives you access to doing new, cool, interesting things. Suddenly you're getting access to things that nobody else can do, and also potentially easier ways to make purchase and save money. Okay, so what we just talked about is a whole bunch of ways that you can look at to build value for a brand. But the kind of crux of the question that we'll be talking about today is that how do you actually show me the money? So if your CEO or CMO says to you, what is our return on investment? You need to be able to actually give them a measurable answer. So there are a number of ways you can do that. One of the ways is looking at the value of a fan. So you've probably seen generic studies being thrown around, often either US-based or global-based, saying, the value of a Facebook fan is $3. And probably rightfully, I would say, you would say, that's meaningless to me. Like, how do you know what the value of my fan is? Maybe they're a completely disengaged person who never sees my posts. Maybe there's somebody who's really, really valuable fan and buys my products all the time. And that will vary from brand to brand, industry to industry. So one of the ways that you can address measuring your ROI is to establish what is the value of my fans. It's not easy, but there are ways that you can do it. And once you do that, it allows you to measure the effect of your campaigns as well. So this is an example from CIMB, it's a Stienberg, and this is something that ran in Malaysia. Called Saving Circle. I won't go into the details of it, but basically they want to drive a particular kind of behavior, which is trying to increase people's savings. Okay, so they want people to try and save and be rewarded for the fact that you saved. So something that CIMB has really, I would say probably the most advanced in social bank in the region. They're able to link their back-end customer information with their people's Facebook profiles. So what that means is when somebody takes part in this, you can actually, you can say they can start measuring things like, okay, so this person joined the contest, how much are they actually saving? And you can start comparing that with other customers of the same demographic. So I've got a bunch of people who are 25 years old, they're saving X amount of ringgit every month, and then I compare that with all my other 22 to 25-year-old customers. Are they saving more as a result of joining this contest, or are they not? And also you could say, like, these people are my fans, are they also spending more on their credit cards? So you can compare people who are your fans with your general customers. And then the next stage is to say, well, okay, so if I run another campaign, do their behavior shift again? So you can actually measure the result of every campaign following that. Once you've established that link, you know who your fans are, you measure the results of every campaign that you do. Very, very directly measurable ROI for every campaign that you do in social from that perspective. Direct earning channels, so we talked about a whole bunch of direct earning channels, e-commerce, etc. Those are obviously generally very measurable. So if people are purchasing directly within social, clearly you know if people are within social, how much they're purchasing. If you're using social to drive to purchase, so things like Hit Me, they know exactly where people are coming from, they can measure the purchase, they can measure the conversion rate, all of that kind of stuff. So again, very measurable, alternative revenue streams, and CRM channels. So all these things, because they're linked to social, you can measure them quite directly. And now I'm going to pass it back to Sunita.
I'm going to try and yell. Can you guys hear me at the back? Cool, okay. So, we talk a lot about measurement, we talk a lot about results, and there's two ways that we see our clients measuring success. There are clients that will use us at Facebook because we have an internal measurement team, and depending on their KPIs, we will sort of focus and measure that. And then we also have clients that measure it themselves. But when we do talk about measurement, and I had talked about this before, when we think about the history of trying to reach your customer, whether it was on radio or television or now this thing called the internet, we never really knew who we were talking about or talking to. So whether it was radio or television or on the internet, there's this famous little cartoon of you can be anybody you want on the internet. But now with the introduction of social, you really do know who you're speaking to. So, on Facebook, I'm Sunita, I work for Facebook, I live in Singapore, I'm married to Jim.